You're listening to WCAT Radio, your home for authentic Catholic programming.
Welcome to the Catholic Mama, where you'll learn how to deepen and defend your faith, find comfort as we share the vocation of parenthood, and learn how to raise your children confidently Catholic. I'm your host, Christine Mooney-Flynn. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome to the Catholic Mama. I'm your host, Christine Mooney-Flynn, and thanks for joining me on this episode, where I'm very happy to be joined by Mary Lenaburg, who is a Catholic wife and mother, the author of one book in particular that we'll be talking about today called Be Brave and the Scared, as well as I am coming to understand, a second book is in the works, as well as a speaker. We've been chatting for the past couple of minutes, an all-around very nice lady. Mary, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a delight to be here.
Awesome. Well, that was a little brief introduction of the wonderful woman that is Mary. Can you please explain to our listeners, if they haven't heard of you, who you are?
Well, as you said, I'm a wife and a mom. I have been married for this year, it's 32 years in August, to my husband, Jerry, who I met on a blind date. That he was not my blind date. He was my friend's blind date.
No.
So we started off with a really great story, which, is lovely. All great love stories have an interesting beginning. And we were blessed with 4 souls, 2 that went to heaven. We didn't get to hold, and 2 that we did. And our son, Jonathan, will be just turned 30. And so he is on the I don't know what you would call, he's dating. I don't know, like he's single, dating, Catholic man, which is interesting to watch as his mother. So, I just pray a lot. And then our daughter, Courtney, who has now been home with the Lord for 5 years. She passed away when she was 22 years old, and she had profound disabilities. So she was born perfectly fine. And then when she was 5 weeks old, she began having grand mal seizures. And when she was 7 months old, we gave her a medication to help control the seizures that she had an allergic reaction to and caused severe brain damage. So by the time she went home to the Lord, she was 5'8", blonde hair, blue-eyed, curly, like Shirley Temple hair, and beautiful disposition, beautiful smile. But she was the developmental age of a 7 to 9 month old child. So she was the heart of our home. And even Jonathan said to me this morning, actually, he was like, Mom, if there's anything I miss her laughter. And it's just, she's with us. She remains with us. She's doing an awful lot of work from heaven as a saint interceding for us. But I was blessed to be home with her for 22 years. And then for the past 5 years, I've just, the first year is pretty much just grieving, but then I went to work as a liturgist at our parish. And then God called me out of that into speaking and sharing our story with whomever. I speak to youth, I speak to women's retreats, I speak to parish missions, all kinds of things. And then in May of this 2019, Ave Maria Press published my first book, Be Brave and the Scared, How I Learned to Trust God During the Most Difficult Days of My Life. And I just signed a new contract for another book with Ave last week. And that one will be about identity and being seen, known, and loved as a daughter of the King, and what it means to belong.
Wow.
So it doesn't have a title yet.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I mean, I would imagine, you're so busy and, really consumed with being a mother and caretaker over these years. Did you have any idea, any inkling that you would want to tell this story later on?
No. I mean, I've been blogging since 2007, back when blogs were a thing. They're coming back again, which is interesting. But I remember when I first started sharing about our daughter in 2007, I was one of, I think, a handful of women around the world, not even Catholic, not even Christian, just women, sharing about what it was like to have a profoundly disabled child. So it was kind of a new thing. And it was just my life. People were fascinated as to how we made decisions for her care, how I got her dressed. She was in a wheelchair her whole life. She never took a step on her own power. So just little things like that. And then they kind of came to take her into their heart. And they traveled with us for 7 years until God called her home. But no, I just kind of shared our life. I never thought that I would, get on a plane and go to, Peoria, Illinois and stand on a stage in front of hundreds of women and, start talking about my daughter and how she brought me to Christ. No, that I didn't see that one coming.
Now, you say brought you to Christ. You had been raised Catholic, correct?
I was raised Catholic, but I wasn't a very good one. And as I write about in the book, I had made some very poor decisions. My husband and I both made very poor decisions, and in regards to our intimate life, in regards to our pre-married life and post-married life. We both, once Courtney was with us, when a crisis happens within a marriage, it really brings to the surface all the things that are not really solid, not standing on solid ground. It brings up all the icky stuff that nobody ever wants to talk about, but you're living your life. So you're like, I'll deal with that later. Oh, no, I don't see that. We don't have time to deal with that. Courtney's in crisis. We need to take care of her. But what happens is that all of that, it's like a tornado hits a town, or an earthquake rather hits a town. And you know how the roads buckle and the sewage line breaks and all that stuff comes to the surface. Well, that's what Courtney did for us. She brought all that stuff that we had been pushing down and not dealing with for more than a decade, and she broke it open for us because we had to be a team to take care of her. All three of us needed to be on guard and ready to go because we were basically living in a pediatric ICU unit. And at any moment, she could have a seizure. She could stop breathing. At any moment, it could be the day that God would bring her home. We just never knew. And there was no precursor to it. It just happened. She never gave us a sign that, I'm going to have a seizure now. So at about year, 3, 4 in our marriage, that's when it all kind of fell apart. And what we learned was, first of all, 80% of all marriages that have a child with a disability end in divorce. We didn't know that. 80%. And that number is a little bit more now. I think it's like 82. And the reason being is because when you have a child that requires so much of you, then you begin to lose yourself in that child's care. Sure. And therefore, that marriage that was the beginning, for the two of you, you have distance between spouses. You might disagree on what to do for your child and how to care for them medically, how to care for them educationally. There's just so much pressure. There's financial pressure, that's tremendous on that couple, that if it's not a solid foundation, then it breaks. It breaks, and we broke. Praise God. I was Catholic. I was raised Catholic. My husband was a good Lutheran man, raised in a solid Lutheran home. So we were both Christians. And when it did break, we made a choice, and we made a choice for one another. And what came to the surface for us was addiction. My husband to pornography, myself to food. And it was just the way that two people who felt unworthy of love were kind of trying to deal with things. And it wasn't the right way, because God's way is always the right way. But we needed our daughter to show us that, because what Courtney taught us was, you are loved by a God who needs nothing from you. You don't have to prove yourself to him in any way, shape, or form. As a matter of fact, there's nothing you can do that will stop him from loving you. No shame, no sin, no guilt, nothing. He is love. It's all he does is love. And so we had to figure that out. It was a long, slow road, that if we loved Courtney with complete and total love, and she did nothing to earn our love, she couldn't do anything to earn our love, that if we put ourselves in Courtney's position and, looked at how God was loving us, it was even more than that. It was even more than what we were capable of. So the beauty of a disability is that it's all of us inside out. Everybody could see what was wrong with Courtney. You and I spend a lifetime trying to hide it. And so it gives you a freedom to just enter into healing and enter into restoration and surrender. And surrender comes before, you have to trust that God has a plan for your life, but trust takes faith and faith takes trust. They go hand in hand. Yeah. Which is why in Revelation, they say, Revelation, I think it's 19:11, the God who is faithful and true. And that's with a capital F and a capital T. He is faithful and true. And we needed to learn to trust him. And so over the course of that next 12 years, Jerry came into the church as a Catholic. and we sought help for our marriage and for our addictions. And we were able to go, as I write about in the book, to Lourdes on a healing pilgrimage, which changed the trajectory of our life. And our experience there was very profound. And we came home from that knowing that we needed to live differently. And so we did. And we were brave in the scared, and we were scared every single day. And we still are, we still are, but it's different now. Because she is one of the most powerful intercessors we could ever ask for. And our life looks so completely different now than it did when she was alive. And yet I look back on that time as an incredible, beautiful, sweet gift, because I knew what to do. I knew how to love her. I knew how to take care of her. And now she's gone. And now I look around and I'm not quite sure what to do. And so it takes a whole different journey of trust and faith in what God needs me to do now.
Yeah, I mean, it's a couple of decades of living in a very specific role, and to have to switch that suddenly and redefine yourself and still do it in a way that honors all that time that you spent doing that other thing.
Yeah.
But I think it's so interesting. I mean, as a spouse and a parent, our job is to get ourselves, our spouse, and our children to heaven. And we usually think of us helping our children get there, but it sounds like the roles have been reversed a little bit, with Courtney helping to pave your own stairway to heaven.
Yeah, Courtney and Jonathan, they both taught us to surrender. What we forget is that our children don't belong to us. We take possession of them for a short amount of time. We have the great privilege of cooperating with God and creating them. We have a great privilege of loving them and walking with them through their life and helping to form them in the way God is asking us to form them. And then you got to let them go. Now, of course, typically we let them go to college and we let them get married, and or choose a vocation, as a priest or a nun or whatever God calls them to. I didn't anticipate when I had Courtney that my letting go of her would be to give her back to God so soon. And now the letting go with Jonathan is a letting go of expectation for his future. His future belongs to him and to God, and to, if he's called to marriage, to the woman that will hold his heart. And my job is now to make sure that the door is open and there's a place at the table. There's a safe place to land no matter what's going on. So it's a very different role to have. Many people are going through kind of empty nesters, and you got to figure out, what is my role now as a wife, as a mother. But what our kids taught us was, however strong our sacrament of marriage is how strong our family will be. Mm. Everything flows from that sacrament. Everything flows from those vows, from that blessing of God. And if you're not safe and strong there, then nothing else is safe and strong. And that doesn't matter what age your kids are. It doesn't matter if you've been blessed with children physically or through adoption, or if you haven't. It doesn't, none of that changes. The fact that the sacrament that has taken place requires cultivating, it requires tending, it requires time and space, and the fruits of that, and fighting for that, in my case, fighting and asking God to come in and restore it and redeem it and rebuild it and repair it. The fruits of that are just astounding. I'm more in love with my husband today than I was the day that I said yes. I respect him in a way that there was a time in my life I never thought that would happen. I feel loved and cared for and nurtured by him, again, in a way that I never thought he was capable of. But that's what God does. He does the impossible. So, Courtney was our lesson in the impossible. She should have never survived her first birthday. She should have never survived her third or her fifth. And at that point, they all just got real quiet and stopped talking. God's plan is God's plan. And when we surrender ourselves to it, it sounds rather chaotic, like you're just surrendering everything. No, you still have work to do. But he's just calling you to do the next right thing. And we get so locked into this idea of what we want and our expectations that we don't leave room for the Holy Spirit to kind of guide our way.
I like what you're saying here about, surrender. It's not a passive thing to do. There is a very active role that we play in surrendering and continuing to surrender. I like that it's not just not doing anything, but choosing the next right thing, which did you get better at choosing the next right thing as you went along?
I did. Yes. That, because I'm sure that when, a young mama listens to this, they're like, well, I don't even know what that means. I didn't either. It's okay. It's okay. Saint Faustina really helped me with this when she wrote in her diaries, which I don't want anybody to think that I'm a theologian. I just read this like 6 years ago. So nobody, and I'm 52. So nobody get the idea that Mary has it all together. No, we're all on a journey. But I remember reading when she would get overwhelmed with all the things she needed to do, both spiritually, physically in the convent, everything that was going on. What she did was she turned to her vocation, right? She turned to the vow and what that said about her, and she did the next right thing. What does that mean? I am a wife first. What is my vocation? My vocation is to take care of my husband, and if I am blessed with them, my children. So when I get overwhelmed with things, both spiritually, emotionally, or physically, the first thing I have learned to do is turn back to my vocation. And what is it I need to do? Well, I need to do the dishes. I need to do the laundry. I need to clean a toilet. I need to go to the grocery store. And you take it one thing at a time. And while you're doing those very practical, everyday, mundane things, that's when God's working and he's talking to you, and he's talking through the podcast you're listening to or the music you're listening to. Or if you're doing it in silence, he's speaking to you in the silence. There is nothing that we do with God that is passive. Even in abiding in him, right? So we think of surrender, right? To let go of. We think of a holy sacrifice, right? An offering to him. And you're thinking, how is cleaning a toilet a holy sacrifice and offering to the Lord? Well, I personally can't stand cleaning toilets. And therefore, if I'm praying for another person while I'm doing it, I am now taking part in this thing called redemptive suffering. And I'm offering up that time for that person. So it's turning the mundane into something holy, which is what God did. He came down to be one of us. So anything we're feeling, anything we're doing, he already experienced. So I learned to choose the next right thing by turning back to my vocation and doing what needed to be done. That still doesn't mean that I don't get overwhelmed. It still doesn't mean my to-do list is not 5 years long, but it means that I now just do the next right thing and I work my way through it. And that's an active thing to do. Surrendering is a choice. To love is a choice, right? To trust is a choice. To have faith in something greater than yourself is a choice. I have to choose all of these things. There's nothing about my relationship with God that's passive. And the word I chose for this year was, or that the Holy Spirit chose for me rather, was abide. And first it was adoration. And I thought, oh, just go to adoration. And then I guess 3 weeks ago, it came to me, no, it's not adoration. It's abiding. It's resting. It's sitting. But it's not a passive sitting. It's sitting within his presence and receiving. So whenever you receive something, it's not a passive thing. You actually have to grab onto it as it comes to you. Arms open wide to receive.
And for a lot of busy parents, it is very hard just to sit anyway. That's a very active thing, just to sit and listen and be quiet. I know that is the one thing that I'm very good at saying all my prayers and getting that in, because I don't want to say it's noise, but I'm so used to being busy, that is something I'm very comfortable with, is continuing mentally to be busy.
It's very
the
familiar.
Sitting that's difficult.
Right. Well, and the sitting and, and sitting, not only physically sitting, but like sitting spiritually in your mind. Like, I'm going to sit here right now. And as I look at the wall that has the crucifix, and there's a grape jelly stain next to the bottom of the crucifix, and that I really should get up and clean that. But no, I need to look at the crucifix, and I just need to be quiet for like 2 minutes. And yet in that 2 minutes, you're thinking, I could have birthed 13 children at this point. Like, and it's only been 2 minutes. I mean, that's how my mind works. It's very, very hard for me. But in practicing that, I started with an egg timer. What my spiritual director taught me was, you look at the crucifix and you just simply say, either Jesus, I trust in you, and you just repeat it like a mantra. And after a while, you're still saying it, but you can't hear it. Or Jesus, I love you, or thank you, Jesus. He goes, 3 words, whatever it is, 2 words and Jesus. Pick your thing. And just, it's almost like when we're rocking a baby to sleep. Like, I love you. It's okay. You're okay. You're okay. You know, and that gentle pat on the back. And it's a very active thing, because as you know, you're holding a baby, and between your shoulder blades, it begins to burn, and like your hips are creaking, and you're just like, come on, go to sleep, go to sleep, go to sleep. You know, and you can imagine God holding us. Come on, just sit with me, sit with me, sit with me. It's okay. And it takes practice. But it has been very fruitful, and it took me a long time. It took me well over 2 decades to even get to like 2 minutes of actual quiet. So I don't want anybody to give up. Start with a minute, see where it gets you.
Yeah, that is very good advice. Years ago, I was, I'm a convert, and I came to the faith about 2 years ago, so pretty recently.
Wonderful.
And I spent years as a spiritual but not religious person, and really got into Eastern religions, very poorly studied and cobbled together ones, but meditation was always big in there. And, so I was, it's so interesting, such a difference between trying to empty yourself out and stay empty with that kind of meditation, and just with the Catholic contemplation, just to sit and just receive God's love. It's such a more fulfilling and joyful sitting than anything that I would have previously tried and failed at doing.
And isn't that interesting? And emptying out and to remain empty. That is so not what God wants.
Right.
You know, he wants to fill that well so that we pour it out, and then we refill it and we pour it out. And it's, you know, we get to this point, hopefully, that it's so full all the time that even though we're pouring, we're not losing anything. You know what I mean? It's just so full, because God is so full, and it's so much that you can't get tired, because he's still there. And it's when we come to the end of ourselves and our expectations for ourselves where God stands in that gap, and that's where the real movement happens. And Courtney required her parents to be quiet. It was a requirement in her life for me to sit with her in my arms for hours at a time. You know, where there was no remote control, and there was no iPod within reach, and there was just me and her. And, you know, after you do that for 3 or 4 or 5 or 12 years, you finally come to a place of, Lord, I'm just holding your child, and I am receiving the love that she can give me in this moment, as I want you to receive the love that I want to give you. And, you know, I offer this suffering. I offer watching your child suffer as a suffering in itself. I offer the turmoil in my heart. I offer all the dreams and expectations I had for having a daughter, all the pain that it causes me to know that, you know, she'll never get married. She'll never have children. She'll never go to prom. You have to grieve all of those things, and you give all of that as gift back to God, because he's the one that gave her to you in the first place. And so it's just a process and I think of that, like grieving for who I thought Courtney would be is the same as me grieving for what I thought my life would be, you know? And life is grief and joy, sorrow and joy. It's a balance. You walk hand in hand, sorrow in one and grief in the other, and joy in the middle. And it's a balance between where you go, you know? And they just, I don't know, she taught us so much. And what's interesting is that she's been gone for 5 years, and we still keep learning new things. It's like, wait, aren't you done? Like, she's gone. And you're just like, nope, she's not done. She's just free. So, and you know, I don't know, marriage, children, they change you
Yes.
from
Yes,
the
they do.
inside out, literally from the inside out.
Yes. And like you said, if there's some bad stuff on the inside, that certainly comes to light once you really have to dig in and do the work with children in a marriage.
Oh, amen. Amen.
So you went to, how long into Courtney's life were you at Lourdes?
She was 7.
7. Okay.
She was 7 when we went to Lourdes. And that experience was profound in that we had 2 prayers for our daughter that we kind of prayed every day. And it says once you pray the prayer, God hears the prayer and he doesn't forget it. But we're human. So we just wanted to remind him, every single day of her life, what our desire was. And the first was that, I had been the first one to hold her when she took her first breath, that we knew she would probably go before us, or her condition was that her life would be shortened. And so my prayer was, Lord, when that moment comes, number 1, let me know that it's coming. Don't let it surprise us. And may I have the privilege and honor of holding her as she goes to you. I was there for the first breath. May I be there for the last. And that was as selfish a prayer as I could ask. I didn't want her to be alone. And I wanted to know that, like, this is the moment. Here we are. And I'm so humbled that God did grant me that. Courtney had a beautiful, beautiful death in my arms with a simple exhale on December 27th, 2014, with a smile on her face. She went straight to our Lord. It was just beautiful. And that is a gift that I will carry with me until the day I get to hold her again. But the second one was more specific in that Courtney never spoke like you and I are talking right now. She's what they call nonverbal. And so when she would try to speak, she sounded like Chewbacca from Star Wars. She would laugh and she would make these wah kind of sounds, she just never really formed words.
Sure.
And she had a very kind of low voice because she had something called a VNS device, which is like a pacemaker for the brain.
Yep.
So it kind of reverberated and it lowers the natural voice. So she sounded very low, very, an alto voice for certain. And my voice is not high, so I knew she would have a low one probably anyways, but just a little bit lower than that. And I remember when she was 3, everybody else, their kids were talking and Jonathan talked, at that age and before then. And, mama this, mama that, mama this, mama peace, mama this, peace and thank yous, spaghettis, all the cute words that little kids say. And Courtney never did that. And I remember holding her when she was 3 and I just crying. And she's sound asleep in my arms. And I just cried out to the Lord. I said, I just want to hear her voice. I just want to hear her say one time, I love you, Mom. I love you, Mom. That's what I wanted. I mean, I was so desperate for that. And I just prayed that. I'm like, Lord, if it's ever in your will and in your power, I mean, obviously it's in your power, but if it's ever in your will that you would allow us to hear that, however that happens, before we die, while we're still this side of heaven, that sure would be awful nice and real sweet. And so we went to Lourdes. We had this experience in the water that I write about in the book. And I won't say the whole story, but basically when I went into the water, Courtney went into the water first. For those of you that don't know what Lourdes is, it's a place where St. Bernadette saw a vision of our Blessed Mother in the 1850s. And she appeared to her. And this is where the word, I am the Immaculate Conception, was given to Bernadette. And it's a place of healing. There have been hundreds of thousands of millions at this point, physical, emotional, and spiritual healings that have taken place in the water of Lourdes. And when you go there, you can actually see the crutches of the first 10 to 12 people that were physically healed at the baths. They still hang there to this day. It's just beautiful. It's a physical sign that God is present and Our Lady is interceding for us. And so you go into this little bath and it's like a, 6-foot rectangular tub. And it is the coldest water on planet Earth. And you take a step into the water and what they ask you is, what is your prayer? And so Courtney was prepared on a stretcher because, of course, she couldn't walk. And she went around the corner and you go into the water as God brought you into the earth, which I was not prepared for. You go in, with a sheet wrapped around you and you're completely unclothed because the water is healing water and therefore it must get to all parts of your body.
Sure.
to heal. So I don't know why I didn't think about that before we went there, but it was a little shocking when, the lovely lady that was helping me was asking me for my undergarments. I said, no, my mom told me to keep those. So I can't have them. So it took me some time. It's a little disconcerting, but I think it's done that way simply because you need to be shaken up a little bit. You need to be ready for what?
In your birthday suit and going in the coldest water.
Yeah, the coldest water ever in a cold sheet in a foreign country. Yeah, you need to be ready for that. Because then, if you think about it this way, never in my life had I been more prepared to hear the voice of God or Our Lady. I had been praying, I had been fasting, and now I was naked, covered in a sheet, totally off my game, stepping into a cold bath of water, not knowing what was going to happen. So you are gripping in your mind and in your heart, like, Lord, I don't know what's happening. I'm yours. It was a surrender. It was a surrender of everything, physical, emotional, and spiritual in that moment, to just hear, to just know that God was present and Our Lady was interceding. And I stepped into the water. They asked me what my prayer was, and I couldn't think of a darn thing. And I took a deep breath and closed my eyes. I was getting kind of agitated. And I'm like, it's freaking cold. I'm naked in a sheet. I don't understand this. This doesn't feel very Catholic to me. I don't get it. And the woman just simply said, what is your prayer? And I took a deep breath and I closed my eyes. And in my mind, I heard a young woman's voice. And it was just one word. And she said, acceptance. And I just popped my eyes open because I thought, oh, one of the women prayed acceptance out loud for me, and I looked around, and the two women that were with me were silent. They had their heads bowed in prayer. Nobody was moving. And I'm like, I think what just happened, And what I thought was I had heard the Blessed Mother's voice saying, just accept it, Mary. It's going to be okay. And I thought, but I accepted Courtney. I loved Courtney. I didn't understand why the word was acceptance. But then I'm cold, I'm wet, and I need to get out of there. So, I went back into the water, fully immersed in the water, came out. And the thing about the water in Lourdes is there's no towels by the baths. They're only in the hotels. One of the miracles is that you're dry by the time you get dressed.
Oh,
and
wow.
You really are dry by the time you get dressed.
No kidding.
No kidding, you are. I didn't believe it. I was kind of irritated. I was trying to figure out how to use my T-shirt as a towel. and by the time I had my T-shirt on, I was dry. There was no awkward wet clothing. It was amazing. And so they prepared Courtney. They got her team was there with her and got her of nurses and stuff and got her dressed. And she was sitting there in her wheelchair and she was just smiling at me. She was just smiling. She had her own experience where when they were praying over her on the little table with the stretcher, they had a little statue of Our Lady. And they, just as a reminder to the women there, that they were praying for Our Lady's intercession. We don't worship Our Lady as, many people of our Protestant brothers and sisters say we worship Mary.
Right.
No, we just like we say, hey, Barbara, will you pray for me? I say, hey, Blessed Mary, will you pray for me? It's an intercession because Jesus, being a good Jewish boy, would never say no to his mother. So, that's what we do. And so they had this little statue kind of as a reminder, this is whose intercession we're praying for. And they kind of were touching it to different parts of her body where things were wrong. Like she didn't use her feet. So they touched her feet. She had a G tube in her stomach. So she could take liquids because she aspirated them into her lungs. So they touched it there. And as they came up to her head, she was shivering a little bit. And being a neurologically challenged child, they tend to claw their hands. So her hands were curled in little fists by her face. And as the statue came by to her eyes, because she was cortically blind, she took her right hand and swiped Our Lady out of one of the women's hands. And I was kind of freaking out because I'm like, the only thing she does with her right hand is sip, eat her sippy cup. And I thought she was going to put the statue in her mouth and like bite off the head of the statue, which is really not how you want to start a Marian pilgrimage. Let's just not do that. And so I'm kind of got my undergarments on, getting ready to, take the sheet. So I'm starting to like take steps toward the table to take it out of her hand. When what she did was she put it over her heart.
Huh.
And then she took her other fisted hand, which she doesn't move. Like she never, ever purposely moved her hands because she was blind. She couldn't see what she was doing.
Right.
She took that fist and placed it on top of the other one. And she held Our Lady to her heart the entire time. In the water, out of the water, she held her. And she just beamed.
It's beautiful.
And then I went in after her. So I kept thinking, Lord, what does this mean? What does it mean? Acceptance. Then I talked to Jerry after that. And Jerry went in the water, which was, he'd been a Catholic for a year. It's the most Catholic he's ever been. He was freaking him out. And he too was disconcerted with how you go in the water. And I said, what was the prayer? What did you say? And he said, Mary, it was the most amazing thing. I closed my eyes. I took a deep breath, and I heard a young woman's voice say the word acceptance.
No kidding. Wow.
And so we looked at each other and we thought, okay, the Blessed Mary obviously was speaking to us, right? But we're not going to be those crazy Catholics that go and tell people, hey, I just heard from the Blessed Mother. This is really cool, because that's weird. And so we didn't, until we got to lunch, and everybody kept asking us what had happened because we looked different. And so we finally spilled our guts, and they were like, oh, miracles begin there. But we still thought it was our Blessed Mother. It was 4 years later that we realized, as we were in the hospital with Courtney in a surgical situation, that acceptance in the Catholic Church is the third stage of healing. First, there's miraculous healing. So you have something, you pray, you don't have something. Second is healing after a time of suffering, which you think of cancer and chemotherapy. And the third is an acceptance that healing will not happen this side of heaven, only when you enter into the arms of the Father. And so there was that word, as I'm reading, my daughter's in surgery, I'm reading this word, I look at Jerry, and it all comes to me. Who went in the water first? Courtney went in the water first. What was our prayer for Courtney? That we would hear her voice. What was Courtney saying to her parents? I got this. I accept this. I know what's happening. I know why it's happening. And I need you to know that I accept all that God has for me in this journey. So then I told Jerry, and we pray about it, and it seems very clear to both of us that that's what it is. But we weren't quite sure, because you're thinking all kinds of things into it. We went into the recovery room after Courtney's surgery, and we were allowed back in earlier than typical because of the delicacy of her condition. And so she was post-surgery, I think like 30 minutes post-brain surgery. And so they're getting ready to, they're waking her up gently. And they allow me to crawl into the bed with her. And so I get into the bed, and I kiss her cheek, and I hold her hand, and I just whisper in her ear, Courtney, I said, Mom and Dad got it. We got it, sweetie. We understand what happened in Lourdes. It's you. We heard you. You got this. You accept this. You know you will not be healed this side of heaven. Now, mind you, she's 30 minutes post-brain surgery. She opens her eyes. She turns her head. She looks directly at me and starts laughing. And I looked at my husband and I said, God answered our prayer. And from that moment on, we lived our lives completely different. Nothing changed in our life. Courtney still was blind. She still had seizures. Our son still had quite a road to walk himself through depression and anxiety and post-traumatic stress. Our marriage was still being healed. It was still being restored. We were still in therapy. We're still with mentor couples. We're still dealing with addiction. Our finances were a mess. I mean, it was all a big dumpster fire. It was just a big dumpster fire. And yet there was such peace that it was going to be okay as long as we kept showing up to do the work God had for us. And so we lived in a way from that point forward for the next 7 years as if nothing was wrong with Courtney. She went everywhere. We no longer lived in our home. We lived outside. She went to the grocery store. She went to mass. She received communion. She was confirmed. She was just with us. And that was something that people hadn't seen. And we lived outwardly because that's what God asked us to do. And then over the course of those 7 years, Courtney brought people to the church. She brought people to an understanding that there is a God. There were people praying for our daughter who had never said a prayer in their lives and didn't even believe in Jesus. But they believed in Courtney. And if Courtney could be this happy and this at peace and draw people to her like a honey the flies to honey, that's what it was like with her. We would be at the mall and people would come and ask what her name was. And, they would talk to Jonathan, and Jonathan would tell her what their favorite song was. And they'd get down in front of her, and Courtney would have a way of leaning with her ear toward whoever was talking with her because she couldn't necessarily see you. And her hug was forehead to forehead. And so she'd lean in looking for you. Like, where are you? And once you touched her head, she was fully present to you. And she would smile and she would press.
Amazing.
She saw you.
Yeah.
Saw you without ever seeing you with her physical eyes.
What a real gift. I mean, I'm saying
Miracle.
it was such a real gift of herself to all these people. That's amazing.
That's who she was. It's who she continues to be. She is what I consider her a suffering servant. Those who come into the world, I consider many of her brothers and sisters who are disabled that way. They might not have readily chose from the beginning, but there is an acceptance that exists in them that they will fight this fight on our behalf, that they will take that suffering and they will offer it back to the one who is allowing it. And they'll do it with joy, and they'll do it with grace. And they're fighters. They're just fighters. And they teach us so much about who we are. We are children of God. And there is nothing we have to do to earn his love. It's just freely and fully given.
Yeah, two things that I'm jumping out. I mean, one, I'm a big fan of Father Spitzer, and he always talks about near-death experiences and what people can, on the level of the soul, what they're taking in, even if they can't physically express their understanding of it, and it's all there. That's why it's so important, say, to talk to people who may be in a coma, or treat every person with dignity, because even if they're not physically responding in a way that we're used to, they're getting all of it.
Oh yeah.
And they're still doing, they're still doing the work. And then another thing, just a thought, is that, you asked to hear your daughter's, to hear her speak. God answered that prayer, but of course, it's not in always the way that we expect it to happen.
Oh, never.
Right? Yeah, and I didn't hear that prayer for you. Yeah, right. But my goodness, I mean, that's so powerful, because, either way, it would have been, an amazing answer. Say if you did hear "I love you, Mama," but what if you had heard it, but not your husband, or and here you have this personal experience for both of you that just changes everything.
That's what made it so. We knew, when that it wouldn't be "I love you," because she knew I knew she loved me. I knew that every time I put her in my lap and she'd snuggle into my chest and she'd smile and she'd put her hand, right on my sternum. I mean, every time she did that, she would just be, that was her "I love you." What she needed me to know was that she had a purpose. And God had a plan specifically for her, and her life had meaning, and her life had value, and what she was going through was just as important as what I was going through. And that's where the word acceptance comes from, because she needed me to know that she had a voice and that she had a choice, and what her choice was. And it's how God intended it to be. And it's never what I expect. My favorite scripture passage is Ephesians 3:20-21. And I don't have it memorized word for word, but what it is the generosity of God can never be outdone for those who love him. God is so generous, so incredibly in love with us. He wants only good things for us. But because we live in a world of sin, we live in a fallen world, then every time he asks us to surrender and to suffer, he's going to provide the grace and the guidance to get us through. St. Francis de Sales says, if God brings you to the suffering, he will bring you through the suffering. We have to remember that you cannot get to Easter Sunday unless you go through Good Friday. And then you go through the silence of Holy Saturday. And that's the middle. Most of us live between Good Friday and Holy Saturday most of our lives. Suffering and silence. Suffering and silence. God, are you there? Can you hear me? Where are you? This hurts. This is hard. And then he gives us the grace and the hope of Easter Sunday. And every once in a while, we get to dip our toe into that pool, and it's all joy, and it's all love, and it's all awesome. And then we get back to the business of living, and that balance again between Good Friday and Holy Saturday, the suffering and the silence. But if we can praise him in that, if we can choose to praise and choose to love, even though it hurts, even though we feel alone, even though we cannot hear his voice, if we choose to walk by faith and not by sight, that's when mountains are moved. That's when the changes happen. That's when the growth takes place. And it's hard. Nothing is easy. But in the end, you get to sit in that peace and that hope of the resurrection. And that is pure and total peace and joy. And that's worth everything.
Well, I'm so happy to hear after all this, knowing that Courtney is enjoying that forever now. And hopefully, she's bringing other people to that. That's such a beautiful part of this whole story to hear, that God calls us to be lights in the dark world, and she's shown, sounds like a really bright beacon and hopefully created other lights and other people. That's
yes. It's where the title comes from, Be Brave and the Scared. My dad used to say, you only have to be brave and the scared one breath at a time. And for Courtney having seizures, she would stop breathing. And so we would just tell her all the time, just be brave and the scared, baby. You got this. Just be brave and scared. And that's what God is asking each and every one of us. Whatever you're facing, whatever your suffering is, whatever your challenge is, whatever the silence is that you're struggling with, like what God is not answering or what he's not answering to your satisfaction, be brave. Keep asking. Ask the big ask. Do the work he's asking. Make it simple, because it is. But the hardest things are the simplest things, and yet they're still the hardest things to do.
That is very true, oftentimes. So you said that you have a second book coming out. You've been I'm sure, how long did it take to write? From say writing through editing of Be Brave and the Scared. How long was that process?
Okay, from signing a contract to holding it in my hands, it was about 18 months. The actual physical writing of it only took me about 3.5 months for the first draft, and that's simply because it was my life. I lived these stories. I had walked through them. And so it was just a matter of finding a format that we liked, my editor and I liked, and the purpose of the book and what we wanted it to do, which was to show people in actuality, what trust actually looks like. And that's where the stories come from. They're all stories of, I trust you, I don't trust you. I trust you, I don't trust you. I trust you, maybe a little more. Oh yeah, I trust you. Oh gosh, look what you did there because I trusted you. And they're all stories from my life. And it's the first time that I understand that a married woman has talked about a pornography addiction in a Catholic book. And we got to talk about hard things. That's one of the things this book is known for, and that I am known for. I don't shy away from hard things because life is hard. And if somebody doesn't preach truth, especially somebody who's been through it and been healed from it, then how is anybody else going to know that there's a chance that they can get out of it too?
Yeah. I don't know. Our faith, one of the pillars of our faith is truth. And it is very difficult and sometimes an unpleasant thing to hear, but it's part and parcel with our entire faith.
And so with this book, the first draft is due in 3 months. This one's going to be a little bit quicker. And then hopefully we're planning for publication February 2021, but I'm not sure. That's out of my hands. Once it goes back to my editor, then they literally, I can choose a cover from the choices. I can choose we have sort of a name for it, but the name I chose for Be Brave and the Scared, that wasn't the first name it had. So we kind of come to that through the writing. So all of that'll be, the Holy Spirit still has Mary has a whole lot of work to do listening to the Holy Spirit. His work is probably already done, but now we just we write it out. And again, it'll be a book told through stories and through what it is to walk into who you really are. You know, we spend most of our lives, especially as women, denying the beauty of our uniqueness. And we really love that cookie cutter, you know, because it's safe. And yet God calls us to be uniquely ourselves. And what does that mean? And how do you own your sin? How do you own your past? How do you own your shame? How do you own your experience? And how do you take all of that, offering it back to the Lord, and walk in freedom and know that you belong here and that you have a voice here? And I think it's something that many, many women struggle with, many men struggle with. So it's, you know, it'll be a book. My books are primarily directed toward women, although it's interesting with Be Brave, so many men have read it and it's been beautiful. And I'm cognizant of that with this next book as well, because I want it to be available to anybody to read. But being in youth ministry and talking with young adults and being a marriage mentor, you know, I see, and just my own journey of acceptance of my body, of my choices, of my personality, of the boldness of it, and the strength of it, you know, compared to my best friend who is like unicorn on a rainbow. You know, that's her personality, very sparkly, very feminine, and mine's a little bit different, but we're equal in feminine genius. You know, we're
Right.
equal in dignity. It's just, we're different because we're made that way. And we each have strengths and we each have weaknesses. And I just have discovered that the one question I get asked most when I go to speak is how do I accept myself? How do I own this? How do I keep my voice, or how do I find my voice? And it took me a really long time, and now I have it, and I'm never giving it up. You know, because I know what it is to struggle so hard to not know who I am. And I know what it is to try on every dress in the dressing room and still not find the right one, or, you know, every pair of shoes or every pair of, that's what it's like. We try to be all these people that we are not, because we think that's who we want, that people want us to be. It's like this idea, if I tell you who I really am, you know, you're not going to like me. So I can't tell you that. So I hold it. And then I'm miserable because it's not who I really am. And I say, enough of that. Be who you really are. And who you really are is the daughter of the Most High King. Who you really are is an adopted child of Christ. With your own gifts, your own charisms, your own talents. And the world needs you. You have a mission that only you can do. And if you don't do it, no one else can do it. It goes undone. And we need to be confident in that. And we need to stand boldly and firmly in that, so that we can walk out in the world and be the disciple, you know, the missionary disciple that God has asked us to be. And I can only be a missionary with a voice that is Mary's voice, that is uniquely me. And sometimes that means you're not going to like me. And sometimes that means I'm going to rub you the wrong way. And sometimes that means, you know, you're going to get mad. And when those things happen, you know, first of all, they're human. Secondly, you've got to take a look at why they're happening. What is it in the way somebody has acted, or what they've said, or a comment they've made to you that's rubbed you the wrong way? What is it pointing out in you? A lot of the times what I've found is that it's pointing out a weakness in me that I don't want the world to see, you know?
Yep.
So therefore, please don't say that, because you see me too well. You see what other people don't. And so you need to quit that, you know, because I only want to show you what I want to show you. And look at our world with social media. I mean, I'm on social media every day, and it can be a very positive thing. It could also lead you to the fifth ring of hell. And, you know, we have to learn to put boundaries. We have to learn to be kind. We have to learn to celebrate and not compare. We have to learn to walk into the true feminine genius that is waiting for us, that is uniquely ours.
This is an incredibly difficult set of things to do in our 21st century. So, man, we have to wait a whole other year for this.
I know, but see, the thing is, with God, all things are possible.
right.
With God, all things are possible. And it's a process, and it's something that has come to me. I mean, like I said, I'm 52. I'm not a young spring chicken. This has taken time. And there are many people that have gotten there a lot quicker than I did, but the point is, I never want to leave somebody's presence, and I never want them to feel discouraged. I want them to feel encouraged and empowered to own who the person that they are in Christ. Because that's what we're supposed to do with one another. We're supposed to accompany each other on this journey. And yes, judgment will come, but judgment comes within relationship, and correction comes within relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not willing to walk in relationship and accompaniment with someone, then you need to keep your mouth closed and walk on, because your comments are not useful.
That's good. So
I'm very direct.
That's good. That's good. I am all for that. Now, like you said, you're on social media every day. I am as well. But I'll say, if for anybody who doesn't want to wait, or they can read your the Be Brave and the Scared, or if they don't want to wait for the second book, would you please enlighten the listeners on where to find you? I love your Instagram post. The little beautiful corner of Instagram that's the Catholic bubble. It's my favorite place.
I love it. And it's interesting because now as my audience has grown, it's grown into our Christian communities. And so now my direct messages are a lot more evangelization kind of things, like answering questions, which is really fascinating to me. And I love it. I've had to do a little more study, so I make sure that I am speaking truth and I know what I'm doing. But I'm on Instagram under my name, Mary Lenaburg. I'm on Facebook, my author page under Mary Lenaburg. I have a website, marylenaburg.com. We're actually rebranding that right now and rebuilding the blog up again. So you'll be able to find me there. You can direct message me at any time on Instagram, Facebook, and send me your email, and I'll put you on I have a newsletter that goes out once a week with encouragement. So it's a lot of different things. I talk about a lot of different things: faith, food, fashion, just we read. If I read a book and we share it, there's a big conversation that happens. Tomorrow, dropping on Instagram on Fat Tuesday, Jerry will do his All About That Bass reenactment of because we have 200. We now have over 200 reviews on Amazon of the Be Brave book. Wow. And we had told our audience on Instagram that if we hit 200, Jerry would lip sync All About That Bass. And he's been practicing for 2 weeks, and it will be epic. So one thing you need to know about my Instagram feed is, yes, we really are that crazy. And yes, we really do have dance parties. And yes, we really do, watch Hallmark movies. And yes, we really do these things. This is our life. We learned a long time ago to be no one but ourselves. And we'd love to have you join the party. It sure is fun.
I agree with that. I love. It's one of the things, you scroll. Oh, Mary, actually look at this.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mary, so much. I hope, you've been sharing this story so much over the past couple of years. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast to share it. It sounds like, though, you're learning things as you go with Courtney's help. So hopefully this is, it's not, it doesn't sound like, you can't tell the same story. The
is not closed here.
Right. No. Yeah.
The book is not closed. It continues.
That's just true for life, isn't it?
It is. It really is. It's just so unexpected. And it's a joyful unexpected, so we still grieve, we still shed tears, but I know where she is. And I know that's hard. Some people don't, and that's hard for them, but I choose to live in the hope that one day, I imagine this scene where I get to heaven and Jesus will be standing there and he'll, arms open wide, and he'll be like, yes, I'll be with you in a second. Can I see Courtney? And then I said that to my husband once. He looked at me and he goes, you realize what Courtney's going to do? And I said, what? Courtney's going to look at you and go, "Are you an idiot? Would you just go to Jesus?" You know, like,
I've been trying to get you to Jesus this whole time.
What are you doing? Don't look here, go look there. You know, it's all him. And yeah, I can totally see that happening. So, it's life is a great adventure. And every day he's writing a new story, and he loves cliffhangers. Boy, howdy. He just loves it when you come right to the edge of the cliff and you're hanging, and then you know without a doubt that it's him who's pulling you up.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, again, thank you. And for anyone listening, anything that Mary's Instagram or Facebook, I'll put the and to the Amazon where you can find her book. I'll put the links in the show notes. So just ease of clicking. And again, Mary, thank you so much. This has been a real joy to listen to you. I mean, I've read the book. I've read your blog posts and Instagram posts, but it's so nice to actually get to talk to you and hear your voice. So thank you.
Thank you so very much for having me, friend. I truly do appreciate it. Thanks.
All right. Until next time, everybody.
Don't forget to head over to thecatholicmama.com to get your free copy of How to Talk to Your Kids About God. This handy little ebook will teach you how to broach the topic of God with your children, or how to respond to your kids when they want to talk about God, as well as give you answers to 7 of the trickiest questions about the faith that Christian parents face. You'll love the easy-to-understand grown-up answers, the pared-down but not talked-down answers you can share with your kids, plus recommended resources if you'd like to deepen your understanding of the topic. Get yours free at thecatholicmama.com.
God's beloved, I'm Annabelle Mosley, author, professor of theology, and host of Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. I invite you to listen in and find inspiration along this sacred journey we're traveling together to make our lives a masterpiece and, with God's grace, become saints. Join me, Annabelle Mosley, for Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. God bless you. Remember, you're never alone. God is always with you.
For listening to a production of WCAT Radio. Please join us in our mission of evangelization. And don't forget, love lifts up when knowledge takes flight.